Tamriel. Tamriel never changes. Millennia pass, generations succeed one another, yet new wars are fought with old weapons. Young nations vie for the dominance over the same ancient castles their forefathers did before them. The more things change, the more they remain the same, despite the passage of time. Time itself is an abstract entity, a mental construct to help us understand the world around us. Our grasp of this concept is so vague that often we are reminded, to our own surprise, that, for example, Queen Cleopatra lived closer to the release of Skyrim than to the construction of the pyramids. This statement, however, can also be viewed through a different lens: the blinding speed of the technological advancement of our species. The 2,000 years that separate the life of the Egyptian monarch and the fifth entry into the Elder Scrolls series saw the invention of gunpowder, the steam engine, and the internet. Why is it then that Tamriel remains so technologically stagnant across the many millennia of its history?
Well, the answer is that Elder Scrolls is a fantasy setting, and if you wanted Skyrim with guns, just play Starfield. Please, bro, just buy Starfield.
The real answer to this question is a concept used widely across many fantasy settings, known as medieval stasis. The term is self-descriptive. The world appears to be frozen in a medieval period, with little to no change in technology, culture, language, or politics over a period of sometimes thousands of years. Famously used in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings and the Game of Thrones series, to name a few, the eternally medieval setting appeals for multiple reasons. It provides a familiarity while still offering escapism and allowing for a sense of wonder and adventure. The Elder Scrolls 2, at first glance, is a victim of this trope, with the world remaining seemingly the same across multiple eras. However, the universe Bethesda created is unique and is therefore affected by a variety of unique factors, and it can indeed be argued that technology is not just stagnant, but is in fact actively regressing, knowledge being lost with each passing generation. To illustrate the point of Tamrielic technological collapse, let us start at the very beginning. Our modern Homo sapiens species evolved from their earlier predecessor hominids between 200,000 and 300,000 years ago, and the tumultuous journey from that origin to the discovery of language, fire, and eventually metalworking spanned millennia. The Tamrielic races, on the other hand, show the opposite trend. Every race, apart from the Argonians, devolved from the divine Elnophe, Aedric spirits who were present at the creation of Nirn. Hence, while real-world humans began their journey in the Stone Age, Tamriel started as a fully formed and sophisticated entity, and much of the Elnophe knowledge was lost along with their immortality over the millennia of wars, plagues, and societal collapses. Indeed, no better place to observe this is the very landscape of Nirn, with architecture being a good general representation of a society's wealth and scientific progress. The most grand and famous structure on Tamriel, the Adamantine Tower, is also the oldest, with nothing built ever since rivaling its sheer size and complexity. Its incredible proportions are compared to the mountain of High Hrothgar, and it is explicitly stated that the construction of such a structure is impossible in the current day. The White Gold Tower, the center of imperial administration, was built centuries later, and while an incredibly impressive structure itself, it is a smaller replica of the Adamantine Tower, with the consequent Tamrielic architecture continuing to diminish in complexity and grandeur. Other areas of technological progress too are either stagnant or deteriorating. Wars are still being fought largely with sword and spear, and horse and carriage remain the primary form of transportation. Despite the thousands of years of functional, developed societies, well-established research institutions, apparent widespread literacy to even the lowliest farmer, Tamriel as a whole failed to move forward technologically and reach anything similar to an industrial revolution, which begs the obvious question: why? The magical dilemma is not unique to the Elder Scrolls. Indeed, many other settings perpetually stuck in a medieval period share the same issue. With the existence of a force as powerful and effective as magic, the need for other sciences is essentially obsolete. Why pursue the study of medicine, losing lives through trial and error in complex surgeries, when a mildly competent restoration adept can close serious wounds with a wave of a hand? Why bother creating firearms when the School of Destruction teaches its disciples to incinerate an opponent with a mere thought? What purpose would pouring time and resources to invent an engine serve when both teleportation and levitation exist? Even seemingly banal but crucial problems are solved with magic. Refrigerating foodstuff using ice wraith teeth, or increasing the fertility and crop yield of your fields with druidic magics. However, saying that magic prevents the development of technology is somewhat incorrect. For all intents and purposes, magic is the technology in the Elder Scrolls. Technology is, putting it plainly, problem-solving. It is driven by necessity and demand, and replacing the words knowledge or science as tools for practical solutions in the definition of technology with the word magic makes perfect sense within the Elder Scrolls universe. Magic, by its very nature, is a science. It can be observed, studied, learned, experimented upon, and even quantified. The brightest minds of Tamriel follow the path of academia into the magical arts, and not the conventional studies of engineering or medicine as we understand them, and therefore, any kind of technological progress in the Elder Scrolls relates to magic and the development of its disciplines. While it is implied that every mortal has potential for sorcery, very few are trained and skilled with the arcane arts. Otherwise, we would see the application of magic much more often throughout the games. It is logical, then, that the gap between magic users and ordinary mortals be filled with some equalizing force, perhaps even something like conventional technology, as the latter group attempts to level the playing field with the all-powerful wizards. So, why is this not the case? I believe the College of Winterhold's story in Skyrim provides an answer of sorts. During the questline, the Dragonborn and the Mages of Winterhold discover an artifact of incredible power underneath the ruins of Sarthal. At the storyline climax, monks from the Sigiv Order, an incredibly powerful cabal of mages who were subtly manipulating events from the beginning, appear and declare that Tamriel isn't ready for this, and take the artifact away. While in this particular case, you could argue that the intentions were altruistic, and the Sigiks removed an obvious danger from the college. But one thing is clear: powerful forces are constantly observing and controlling research and scientific advancement. It would not be far-fetched, then, to assume that invisible but strict limits are enforced upon technology by powerful magic users, and any new discovery that can threaten the status quo of magical superiority is quickly subdued. It is because of this that firearms will most likely never appear in the Elder Scrolls. Any would-be inventor may quickly find himself with multiple self-inflicted fireball wounds to the back of the head.
I'm stronger, I'm smarter, I'm better, I am better!
The reference to the mostly Altmer Psijic order brings us to the favorite topic on this channel, blaming the elves for everything. It would be logical to assume that a race of long-lived individuals bent on their own superiority over the other races would be at the forefront of scientific advancement. The Altmer in particular seemed to meet all the requirements for rapid technological progress. The Somerset Isles possesses immeasurable wealth, a food surplus, security, and an educated population. Interestingly also, one of the main causes of the Industrial Revolution in England that resulted in exponential growth in technology worldwide was the necessity for machines to supplement the lack of workers, a factor very applicable to the elven races and their low birth rates. So why is it then that the highly educated and resourceful Altmer are unable to break through the barrier of medieval stasis? Well, you could always blame society. The current High Elf government is run by the Valmor, who potentially might be attempting to unmake Mundus to restore elven divinity, making them essentially the school shooter equivalent of a political ideology and less interested in advancing the development of the world that they seek to destroy. But the main reason, interestingly enough, is that the elven strengths turn into the proverbial double-edged sword and hinder their technological progress. The High Elves are by far the most magically gifted race on Tamriel, and hence are the most reliant on it. Their arrogance keeps them tethered to their ways, and the Altmer, blinded by their elven pride, are unlikely to accept any non-magical innovation. Their extended lifespans, too, are detrimental to technological advancements. While seemingly beneficial in terms of having the brightest minds of your race live long lives, dedicating centuries to study and research, progress, more often than not, is fueled by generational turnover, as younger members of society tend to be more open-minded and willing to embrace new ideas. The Altmer, being essentially a species of racist boomers, remain solidified in their outdated beliefs without any clear path to a technological boom.
Today's subject, slavery.
The other elven race with potential for technological advancements are the Dunmer of Morrowind, who suffer from similar problems to the Altmer, but are also hindered in part by their over-reliance on unpaid internships.
You guys are getting paid?
Slavery certainly has its advantages, but overall it is more of a detriment to any society. Morality aside, a workforce of involuntary volunteers creates an economy that does not incentivize progress. In the real-life Civil War era, the American South severely lagged behind the North in terms of industry, due to labor being done by slaves and not innovative machines. The Roman Empire too suffered from its slave-driven economy, and the cheap labor it provided is most often attributed by historians to why the Romans were never driven to reach the Industrial Revolution. Dunmer farming equipment is also far less likely to innovate or do above the bare minimum to save them from the overseer's wit.
I guarantee I could find 1,000 scientific reports to corroborate that it's a fact. You suck.
The Dwemer are, of course, what most people associate technological progress in the Elder Scrolls with. The subterranean race of elves were the innovators in Tamriel, their technologies in many ways exceeding our own modern sciences. While the other races worshipped Aedra or Daedra, the dwarves' only gods were reason and logic, and their entire culture was built around technology and research. Said to have learned from the last of the Aedric Elmophae before they disappeared, the Dwemer were by far the most advanced mortal race to ever walk Nirn. Their technology, however, while appearing to be steam-powered, actually relied on, you guessed it, magic. Dwarven automatons use soul gems as batteries, and a unique type of spellcasting known as tonal architecture was implemented in everything from mining to medicine and architecture. The Dwemer reached the peak of their technological acumen in the First Era, when they created the brass golem Numidium. This god machine was supposed to ascend the dwarves to a higher plane, and it is to this day unclear if their disappearance indicates their success or failure. The outcome for Tamriel is the same, however. The most technologically advanced race simply vanished from existence. The remaining populations of Man and Mer are to this day unable to recreate or come close to anything the dwarves have achieved. While many Dwemer ruins still dot the northern provinces of the continent, venturing within them is a fatally dangerous enterprise, and knowledge is not easily recovered. The secrets of tonal architecture too remained a mystery to all except for Sophesil and his Clockwork City, but with his death and the fate of the city uncertain, that knowledge too may well be lost. The uncertain yet terrifying fate of the Dwemer, their unique methods, and their hostility to all other races unsurprisingly deter the other Tamrielic species from following in their footsteps. Despite painting a fairly grim picture of the state of Tamriel, I would like to finish on a positive note and say that I don't think that the Elder Scrolls 6 gameplay will be limited to sticks and throwing stones. While it is true that Tamrielic society and technology are losing ground against ignorance and barbarity, with constant wars, plagues, Daedric invasions, as well as the previously discussed factors preventing any meaningful progress, the proverbial night is darkest just before the dawn. With the constant comparison throughout this video to our own technological path in the real world, it would be unfair not to mention that humanity spent 99% of its existence in the Stone Age, our scientific progress experiencing unprecedented exponential growth only for the past several centuries, a mere drop in the ocean of our historical timeline. Technological regression, too, was present across our history on multiple occasions, such as the apocalyptic collapse of the Bronze Age or the fall of the Roman Empire. And yet, humanity persisted and kept moving forwards, progress never being linear, instead characterized by many ups and downs. Tamrielic races too have the capacity to restore to a golden age under the right conditions. With the defeat of the World Eater Alduin, Nirn was given a second chance at life, and perhaps we will once again see Imperial or Altmer ships traversing the void of oblivion to reach distant planets. But what do you think? Let me know what I may have missed, or if indeed the entire theory is incorrect. Even when disagreeing, it really is fantastic to see people engage in discussion down in the comments with full paragraphs of well-structured arguments, instead of just telling me to unsubscribe from real life, and I myself learn a lot from these comments. The beauty of Elder Scrolls lore is that so much of it is just vague enough to leave up to personal interpretation, and valid points for either side of an argument. Remember to like and subscribe for more non-Dwemer automaton generated content, and as always, Until we meet again.